Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. GOP leader Kevin McCarthy fell short of the votes needed to secure the gavel today. This is the first time in over a century that there's had to be multiple rounds of voting for House Speaker. Those who opposed McCarthy rallied behind an unexpected nominee. NTD's Melina Wisecup is on Capitol Hill with more.
This is the first time in a century that members have had to go through multiple rounds of voting when electing a House Speaker. They went through 3 rounds and still no official Speaker is elected. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy never budged beyond 203 votes. Now he needs 218 votes to actually take the Speaker's gavel, but he never garnered that support. And, instead of him gaining votes as those voting rounds went on, he actually lost a vote in that 3rd round. Representative Byron Donalds threw his support behind Representative Jim Jordan instead of McCarthy. So we will have to wait to see how this plays out. But it was interesting to see what those opposed were saying. For example, Representative Chip Roy on the floor saying this is less about who's elected to that speakership position and more about shining a spotlight on Congress and reviving that spirit of debate. Here's a look.
So this is what the chamber looks like when we're actually debating and the bodies are in the chairs. How many times have we been down here giving speeches and there's not a soul in the chamber? Yet this is what it takes to get 435 people in the chamber and have an actual debate.
To my friends here on this side of the aisle, I would just say this. The differences we may have, the differences between Joyce and Jordan or Biggs and Bacon, they pale in comparison to the differences between us and the left, which now unfortunately controls the other party. So we had better come together and fight for these.
So yeah, Representative Jim Jordan was nominated in that 2nd round, and that 2nd round was very interesting because you have Representative Jim Jordan nominating McCarthy, and then you have Representative Matt Gaetz coming up and nominating Jim Jordan. And it's important to note that, even in that 1st round of voting, 6 members already cast their ballot for Jim Jordan when he wasn't even officially nominated, and that's nearly as many votes as Representative Andy Biggs got in that 1st round. Andy Biggs took 10 votes in that 1st round, and that was interesting because he's actually up for the speakership position, and Jim Jordan was right there with him even though he wasn't officially nominated yet in that 1st round. So there were, by the last round, there were around 20 Republicans who were still opposed to McCarthy, and of that group of 20 Republicans, we heard from some of them earlier today, and they said that they proposed a deal to McCarthy that could have gotten him 218 votes. One thing that they wanted, for example, was for McCarthy to commit to holding a vote on term limits, as well as some other measures. McCarthy rejected that deal. That's what that Republican group says, at least. And McCarthy says that the reason why he rejected it is because he doesn't want to empower certain members over others. And McCarthy says he's up for this challenge, saying that, he reflected on his record-breaking floor speech, and he said that he can also have a record for the longest speaker's vote, too. So this is, going to play out over the next couple of days. The House has adjourned for the night. They will return tomorrow at 12. Where these voting rounds will continue to play out. It could take days. The longest it ever took was 2 months, and that was back in the 1850s.
Melina Wisecup reporting. Thank you for that. And down the hall in the Senate chamber, Mitch McConnell made history today by becoming the longest-serving party leader in United States Senate history. Besides the unprecedented election for Speaker of the House, the Republican National Committee, RNC, will have elections later this month. Over 70% of Republicans said the party needs a new leader. That's according to a survey conducted by the Trafalgar Group. How is the Republican Party facing the challenges? To find out, I sat down with Harmeet Dhillon, one of the leading candidates. Here's our exchange.
Frankly, since that 2017 inauguration, I feel like that was the last happy meeting of the RNC. That's been 6 years now because we have lost every successive election since then. And I count the recent election where we did narrowly win back the House, but it's by such a narrow margin that Kevin McCarthy doesn't have an assured path to speakership as we speak. That's being wrangled over, and a red wave that should have been ours because of the historic opportunities in this election was not even a ripple hardly. And so my biggest concern is that if we don't have a change in leadership and a fresh vision, we are going to lose in 2024. And that level of failure is simply unacceptable to me. And I think almost every Republican in the country, except for a few members of the RNC who think everything is hunky-dory. So I feel like we need to immediately adapt and change to the current voting laws, which have been changed under our noses. We don't like some of them. But if we are not competing to make sure that everybody starts out the election time by claiming their vote on the first day that voting is available, if we are not training our workers to hustle the ballots, not hustle the voters, but hustle the ballots into the ballot box, we are losing. Why did Katie Hobbs not have to debate with Carrie Lake? She had already banked hundreds of thousands of votes while that conversation was happening. Okay, the same of John Fetterman. He barely had to debate. He did it late because, again, he had a Democrat machine that would have elected him if he were a, ham sandwich. It did not matter the quality of the candidate. We're not doing that. We're not training our workers on how to cure ballots. Ballot curing, which is something that goes along with mail voting, is how one of our California congressmen, Mike Garcia, won his first race and has maintained it. I feel like the spending at the RNC is incredibly wasteful. And you may have seen some stories about flowers and makeup. I'm not talking about that, although that's also wasteful. I'm talking about failed consultants who take away hundreds of millions of dollars that we raise from average Americans. They produce losing races. They've been there sucking down our cash for over a decade, and they continue to enjoy their privilege. That's outrageous. The cost of fundraising is outrageous. We have very fat margins at the RNC. We have Turning Point is a very, very lean operation. I think we could tighten it up fiscally. I run a business. I'm the head of a 40-person law firm. And finally, we have to respect that it's other people's money.
If you do get elected, what is your vision for garnering more independents and Democrats into the party?
This is a complex issue. What we have seen in the last election cycle and even before that is Democrats have played in our primaries using dark money and other efforts to select our candidates for us. And so candidates have to fit the district. I mean, the candidate, Mike Garcia, who wins in California, cannot be the same candidate who would win in Montana, okay? So I think we have to play a bigger role. Now, the party rules currently say that, you can't play in primaries or interfere in them. Okay, that means, a lot of different things, but that doesn't mean that as party leaders, you can't sit down with multiple candidates and sort of work it out. Democrats do that. Democrats hustled Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg out of the primary in 2020 to make sure that Joe Biden had a clear field for whatever reason. They may be regretting that big time right now. But so I think that the party has to play a leadership role. The party has to have its own messaging and talking points in leadership. There are other people in the party, former presidential nominee candidate and President Trump. He has his certainly views on things, and I'm one of President Trump's lawyers, and so I really respect the former president a lot. I've supported and voted for him twice. But the party has to have its own vision of what matters. We have a party platform, for example. Nobody's defending the platform. We have all kinds of issues out there. We should have had some messaging worked out on the Dobbs case. We knew Dobbs was coming down from the leaked opinion. We also knew from the argument at the Supreme Court how it was going to go down if you're a lawyer. I think we were caught flat-footed because we were afraid of the issue. But in fact, life is so much more popular today with younger voters than it was when I was young. When I was young, we didn't have the ability to tell that pain started at 15 weeks or fetal heartbeat or things like that. We shouldn't have shied away from it. We should have embraced it and said, this is federalism. There are different laws in different states, but here's how we're going to try to convince you and win over your heart on the life issue. We didn't do that. We haven't done that. We were afraid of it. And then we complained about it afterwards. So, look, you can make an excuse for one cycle, 2 cycles, 3 in a row, and now you're asking for a 4th. It's just, it would not work in the business world. It should not work in politics. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for the vast majority of Republicans.
Harmeet Dhillon, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
With the surge of the CCP virus taking China by storm, countries around the world have been tightening their restrictions for Chinese travelers. And the Chinese Communist Party is putting their own spin on things. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
As a wave of COVID infection sweeps across China, the regime threatening to retaliate against Western countries like the U.S. that have placed restrictions on Chinese travelers. On Tuesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry accused these countries of, quote, using COVID measures for political purposes, adding that China rejects them and will take countermeasures. China is pushing forward with its border reopening despite a severe COVID outbreak. Many countries, including the U.S., the UK, and Japan, have mandated screening for Chinese travelers. And the White House today defending the new rules and pushing back on China's claim that they lack scientific basis.
This decision is based on public health and science. This is coming from our experts here, and other countries like Japan, like South Korea, the UK, France, India, Italy, Malaysia are also taking similar public steps here. The World Health Organization is calling on China to release more data.
The White House adds that China has no grounds for any retaliation.
There's no cause for retaliation here, just because countries around the world are taking prudent health measures to protect their citizens.
The White House today also joined the WHO in calling for more transparency from the Chinese regime. A National Security Council official told Reuters that it's important for China to share viral sequencing data, which is critical to identify any potential variants. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.